You're going out there to destroy them, right? Not to study, not to bring back, but to wipe them out.
Look, those 2 specimens are worth millions to the bioweapons division, right?
All right, I'm in.
Aliens. Everybody loves Aliens. But why? What's so good about this movie? It has some iconic action scenes, it's got some good cinematography and special effects, it's got memorable characters, and Sigourney Weaver kills it as Ripley. So we can see why people love this movie. When we were kids, we loved this movie. Even now, we can't really say we dislike it, although if we never watched it again, we'd be just fine. Even though there are lots of good things about this movie, the movie is very flawed, and we think the movie's flaws are often overlooked because of all of this good stuff. But we here at the official movie ratings list do not have the luxury of overlooking a movie's many flaws. We must recognize them and report them to you and assign to a movie its official rating. The first issue with this movie is, ironically, the best character in the movie, Ripley. Now, a sequel to Alien without Ripley is a tough sell, so we can accept that she must be in the movie, but the writers failed to justify her inclusion in the story. Think about it from her point of view. Just a few months ago, from her perspective, she saw all of her friends killed and barely avoided being killed herself. She had even been attacked by an android,
I prefer the term artificial person,
that had been programmed by the company to do anything in its power, including trying to kill Ripley, to make sure that the alien survived. She has no reason to trust the company, and even less for wanting to go fight more aliens. Now, the writers justify her going by showing us that she has been traumatized, and she wants to overcome her trauma by facing the aliens head on and destroying them. This is pretty thin, but we do want Ripley in the movie, so we'll let it go. However, the company has no reason at all to want her on the mission. They want to study the alien and hope to use them as bioweapons, and Ripley has made it clear that her only interest is seeing them all killed. She even experienced firsthand the company bending the rules to get an alien specimen for study. The company should be trying to prevent Ripley from coming on the mission. The government also has no reason to want her there. She's not a scientist who studied the alien, and she isn't a space marine trained to deal with this kind of stuff. She barely survived a run-in with one alien, so it's not like she's uniquely qualified to handle an infestation of them. The only real value Ripley could add to the mission is her testimony, and the government could easily have her film the testimony and include that into the Space Marines briefing. The argument could be made that since Ripley has to be in the movie, then the writer had to ignore these issues. But we disagree. Rather than having Burke and the lieutenant come in and beg her to come along, she could hear about the mission and beg them to let her come along. Burke could try to convince her it's too dangerous, and try to convince the government that she wouldn't be useful to the mission. And she could make the point that by being there, she would be able to verify with a certainty that these are the same aliens she saw before. Ultimately, the government could decide that they don't care either way, and Burke would just have to live with it, since making too much of a fuss would be suspicious. The Ripley problem wouldn't be as big a deal as it is if it wasn't so easy to fix. With just a little more thought put into the script, Ripley's being there could be a negligible issue, completely overshadowed by the fact that she does need to be in the movie. The second issue with this movie is the Space Marines. We're told that they're tough,
These colonial marines are very tough hombres.
and that they can handle themselves in any situation.
There's nothing they can't handle.
But we quickly discover that this is not the case. They're introduced to us as kind of a silly bunch, cracking jokes and not taking things seriously, but the jokes and bravado wouldn't be much of an issue if the movie showed them to be capable. And when they first enter the settlement, the movie does this. They do seem capable. They move with caution and seem to respect the fact that they could be in danger. However, the movie quickly undercuts this impression by having Hicks blindly shoot at Newt even though he should know that there could be survivors nearby. Then they go to the sublevels under the reactor and everything falls apart. The lieutenant, who for some reason is brand new to the unit, doesn't go in with them. Instead, he hides in the truck hoping his orders are followed. Of course, his orders aren't followed, which makes sense because telling the Marines not to fire their weapons is absurd. They are obviously in extreme danger, so if they cannot shoot their weapons, they should not be there. Everything really goes to hell when the aliens attack. The first thing the Space Marines kill is a Space Marine, and instead of forming up and falling back, they apparently stand around in a circle while the sergeant screams into the microphone at the lieutenant. Funny enough, the lieutenant is giving good orders, he's just mumbling them, which shouldn't be a problem since the sergeant should know what to do anyway. Ultimately, Ripley has to take command, which is ironic since she's the one with no reason to be there. After this unfortunate scene, the Marines go back to being generally competent, but the damage has been done. We, the audience, cannot believe that these Marines are all that good. And if we can't believe in them, what does that tell you about the aliens? They must not be all that scary. Now most of these Marines do need to get killed in this action scene, but we can do that without embarrassing them. So first of all, they do take Ripley's story seriously, at least enough to plan for an unusual mission. Second, they don't suddenly forget that they're on a rescue mission and blindly shoot at survivors. Third, the writers had no reason to include a nuclear reactor with walls that can be pierced by small arms fire. And since these flimsy walls never come up again, and the Marines shoot their weapons anyway, then the writers should have dropped it from the story. The impending reactor meltdown could be easily explained by the damage done by the aliens to the coolant pipes going into the core. Finally, it's not so bad that the lieutenant stays back. Maybe that's just the way things are done in the future. But he and the rest of the Marines should realize right away that they are in a lair. But since there's no movement on the scanners, they decide to do a quick search of the immediate area on the off chance that there's a survivor nearby. They spot the woman glued to the walls and shoot her when the alien bursts out of her belly. Then the scanners show movement and everyone falls back to the exit. But just before they leave, aliens start pouring in, cutting them off. The Marines use solid tactics, with some of them shooting while others are moving, laddering down the hallways, while the lieutenant uses the map to guide them towards the exits. These exits are all glued shut or blocked by more aliens, so the Marines start getting picked off one by one. Then Ripley realizes that they're all going to die, so she starts driving the truck to burst through the wall. The lieutenant sees what she's doing and starts guiding the Marines towards that wall. The scene could continue the same as the actual scene, except now the Marines haven't embarrassed themselves. Now after this scene, we see even more incompetency when we find out the pilot of the dropship was sitting around with the ramp wide open, which is just a bad idea in general. This can be fixed by the group at the reactor being unable to reach the pilot over the radio, and when they arrive back at the settlement, they see the ship with the windshield broken. When they go inside, they find no bodies, but they see some of the key instruments have been damaged by acid, rendering the ship inoperable. Another problem is that they left no one in orbit. Now there wouldn't be much of a movie if the people in orbit could just send down a rescue, but again, this is an easy fix. The long-range radio in the dropship could be among the instruments damaged by acid, meaning they will have to fix the settlement's radio antenna so that they can contact the ship in orbit. These are big changes, but the writers of this movie made the Space Marines so utterly incompetent that it is impossible to take them seriously, and this is such a big problem that big changes are warranted. While the incompetent Space Marines is the movie's biggest flaw, there are still more to discuss. For instance, Burke's plot to infect Ripley and Newt with aliens and sneak them past ICC quarantine is ridiculous. People infected with facehuggers wake up for a time before the alien bursts out. In that time, Ripley would tell Hicks what had happened and Burke would be busted. Even if Burke was somehow able to keep them unconscious, how could he get them aboard the dropship without explaining to Hicks what had happened? Hicks already knows that Burke is unhappy with Ripley's idea of nuking the whole site, so anything that happened to Ripley would automatically cast suspicion on Burke. It's a stupid plot, and after much discussion, we see no way of fixing it. The whole thing must be dropped. The movie is already a bit long, so it can stand to lose some scenes. Perhaps there could be some contrivance that puts Ripley and Newt into essentially the same situation with the facehuggers, but that is the writer's problem to solve, not ours. Other than Burke's plot, the movie after the big action scene in the reactor is, for the most part, pretty good. Nothing needs to change until in the climax of the movie, Ripley finds herself in a standoff with the Queen as she threatens the facehugger eggs with the flamethrower. Here we get one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in a movie. Two aliens are approaching the chamber through hallways on opposite sides. The Queen, literally, no joke, looks at them as if to say, hey, you guys back off, she's not bluffing. Not only does it look silly, this behavior is not alien. Telling the other aliens to back off is distinctly human behavior, and even bears will put themselves in danger to protect their young. These aliens seem to be the opposite of alien, as their behavior is actually very relatable. In the first movie, there's never any reason given for why the alien kills. We don't know if it eats them or uses their bodies to make more facehugger eggs or anything. We don't know anything about it other than that it's alien. Now we know that it's basically an intelligent but ugly mammal. So the scene is just bad on many levels and really should not have been put in this movie. Up to this point, Ripley has been the one person in the story who hasn't been stupid, but the writers couldn't leave her out. After the Queen tells the other aliens to back off, Ripley wastes all of her ammo blowing up eggs that are about to be vaporized by a 40 megaton nuclear explosion. It makes sense to blast them with fire to hopefully cover your escape, but why use every bit of your ammo? The only reason it happened that way is to make the scene with the Queen coming out of the elevator more intense. But this could have been accomplished by having her use all her ammo killing aliens on her way to the elevator. In fact, the standoff with the Queen could have been skipped entirely and she could simply stumble into the chamber, see the Queen, then run out of there, all while being chased. Then you could show a quick scene of the Queen detaching from her womb thing and the elevator scene could still happen. Then finally, the writers decide to go full Saturday morning cartoon, and there's a fight between Ripley in her cargo loader suit and the Queen. Spoilers, Ripley wins. This scene can be easily fixed. Just don't do it. Have the Queen get blown up by the reactor explosion. So there you have it, Aliens. It's got its good parts and its bad parts. It's a fun movie that everyone should probably watch at some point, if for no other reason than that everyone else has seen it. We can understand why people love this movie, but it is absolutely not better than Alien, and it is absolutely not the best action movie of the 80s. It's really kind of a stupid movie, and since we are almost definitely never watching this movie again, it will stay where it sits on the list as a 4. It just doesn't quite pass. Almost, but not quite. We here at the official movie ratings list would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed yourself, please consider subscribing to our channel and leaving a thumbs up on this video. And together, we can change the way we watch movies.